146 people were killed in two plane crashes that happened 5 months apart in Indonesia and Ethiopia. Both planes were Boeing 737 MAX 8s. Then, this past January, Boeing came inches from yet another catastrophe as a door plug blew off an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 plane at 16,000 feet, shortly after taking off from Portland, Oregon.
A nightmare scenario for passengers. The clothes on one child sucked out.
This was no surprise. Unfortunately, the company has struggled mightily with manufacturing, and we've had over 20 production quality defects. It's hard to keep up with all of them.
No one was seriously injured in the accident, but the blown-off panel produced a force so strong that some headrests and seatbacks were ripped from the cabin. Fortunately, no one was sitting in the two seats next to the panel.
I saw the picture, everybody saw the opening, but what I really saw was the empty seat. I imagine every human being who would see that understands the severity and the consequence.
There was a time when people said, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. Now, there are passengers who avoid or are scared to get on Boeing airplanes.
The Department of Justice has opened a criminal investigation into the Alaska Airlines incident, and the Federal Aviation Administration said it found dozens of problems after auditing Boeing's manufacturing process.
It just raises issues about the production at Boeing, what's going on. There have been a series of problems over the last few years, and we just need to get our arms around that.
Boeing announced major management changes. CEO Dave Calhoun, who was brought in to get the company out of the MAX crisis in 2019, just announced he'll be stepping down at the end of 2024.
We have another mountain to climb. Let's not avoid what happened with Alaska Air. Let's not avoid the call for action. We will get through that, and I've committed myself to the board to do exactly that.
Boeing stock has also been on a decline. It hit an all-time high in 2019 before the MAX crash in Ethiopia, plummeted during the pandemic, and is down over 25% so far in 2024.
My sense is until you get an all clear, the stock will probably be stuck in a range. And, the key question, really, the multi-billion-dollar question is, when's the all clear? And we just don't know yet.
CNBC explores how the 737 MAX crisis unfolded and what the future holds for Boeing's best-selling jet.
The official 737 christening ceremony took place in the new final assembly building on January 17, 1967.
The first Boeing 737 debuted in 1967. Over the last few decades, strong demand for the twin-engine narrow-body jets led to many evolutions of the 737 family. There have been over 10,000 737s made, and it's flown over 30 billion passengers. The plane is so popular that Boeing estimates a 737 takes off or lands every 1.5 seconds.
If you've flown, you've likely flown at some point in your life on a 737. It's one of the most commonly used aircraft by airlines around the world.
The commercial aircraft market is dominated by Boeing and Airbus. Together, their planes represented over 75% of aircraft flying last year. The two compete on various types of jetliners, especially narrow-body planes, like the 737 and A320, which account for close to 60% of the global fleet. In 2011, Boeing was under pressure after Airbus launched an upgrade to its existing narrow-body plane called the A320neo, which stands for New Engine Option. The plane was more fuel-efficient and could save airlines money. American Airlines, an exclusive Boeing customer at the time, was ready to place a big order with Airbus and told Boeing it would have to move quickly to win the airline over.
Boeing took a lot of shortcuts in developing this aircraft, and those shortcuts literally bit Boeing in its behind.
Designing a new airplane could take up to a decade and billions of dollars in investment. Boeing decided to re-engine the 737 with a new engine variant, which was more fuel efficient, and called it the 737 MAX.
It's a very simple reason why Boeing was looking at re-engineing essentially the 737, which had already been around for decades. It's cheaper. So instead of building a plane or designing a plane from scratch, what they did was made some changes to the existing aircraft to get planes to market faster and then not to lose out on orders to their rival Airbus.
It offers 4 different sizes of the aircraft, the MAX 7, 8, 9, and 10. The MAX 8 received FAA certification in 2017. During development, Boeing engineers observed the nose tendency to pitch up during a specific extreme maneuver. This led to the design of a software called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS, which would push the airplane's nose down. In the MAX 8 crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia, MCAS was activated after receiving inaccurate sensor data. It repeatedly pointed the nose downward until it struck the ground. Pilots on both flights fought to override the system, but both ended in fatal crashes. Pilots of all MAX planes were not made aware of MCAS's existence until 2 weeks after the first crash. It wasn't until after the second crash, nearly 5 months later, that those planes were grounded. The grounding lasted for 20 months, the longest in aviation history. A report from Congress found numerous design, management, and regulatory failures by both Boeing and the FAA. It detailed what it called a deeply disturbing picture of cultural issues and said that it will take a long time and serious efforts to thoroughly resolve. In the 5 years since, Boeing has spent billions trying to recover, but its reputation took another damaging hit after January's MAX 9 door incident.
It's a different set of lessons. Drilling holes wrong, not putting in bolts, right? In one sense, the quality issues are much more simple, where the MCAS issue, the control system issue that they had on the MAX before was in many ways more insidious because it was just a fundamental design flaw in the airplane.
When the first series of accidents occurred, killing 346 people, Boeing was almost in denial of any problems. This most recent problem, Boeing, to its credit, stepped up to the plate and they said, look, this is a problem. We have to investigate it and we have to fix it. And they've owned it.
While Boeing and the FAA have responded more aggressively to the MAX 9 issue, reports and audits of the accident are uncovering new problems. Preliminary reports said the door panel that flew off the MAX 9 appeared to be missing 4 key bolts.
Boeing has also said that there is not paperwork that has documented the door plug getting opened and getting closed while wrapping up manufacturing on that plane.
The FAA production audit found multiple instances where both Boeing and fuselage maker Spirit AeroSystems allegedly failed to comply with manufacturing quality control problems.
The fuselage of the 737 MAX aircraft is made by a company in Wichita called Spirit AeroSystems. No relation, by the way, to Spirit Airlines.
There were issues beyond what happened on the January 5th flight. There were planes with misdrilled holes. There were parts of the fuselage that were not up to standard.
Spirit AeroSystems used to be Boeing Wichita. Boeing spun off its Wichita unit as Spirit AeroSystems to improve profitability. That puts the financial squeeze on Spirit AeroSystems to build the fuselages for the lowest possible cost. Clearly, this has come with some intangible cost in terms of quality control.
About 70% of Spirit's revenue last year came from making parts from Boeing. It's their biggest customer, and then about 25% is coming from Airbus. Boeing is now looking at purchasing Spirit. Some say like it'll give them a little bit more control or a little bit more visibility into its supply chain.
Experts also suggest the change in workforce post-pandemic could be affecting quality.
And it's not a Boeing-specific issue, particularly post-COVID, getting experienced labor. There was a lot of retirement. You think, well, you have a workforce that maybe wasn't experienced, where there's several variables going on within an experienced workforce where, quite innocently, they just left something off and it wasn't caught by the system. That's where you worry, because that should have been caught by the system. And then the big question is, if that wasn't caught, what else hasn't been caught?
Boeing has also been under pressure to ramp up production. The company has delivered 1,462 MAX aircraft, but has 4,752 unfulfilled MAX orders. This has caused a number of issues for the airlines.
Some of Boeing's biggest customers are having to scale back their growth plans a little bit. United is pausing pilot hiring for a couple of months. Southwest Airlines is having to cut some of its flight schedules for 2024 because the planes are arriving late.
I'm disappointed that the manufacturing challenges do keep happening at Boeing. This isn't new. I'm disappointed in that.
Southwest and United have the most Boeing 737 MAX planes in their fleets, so the grounding of these planes has had a ripple effect. Airbus, meanwhile, has been slowly chipping away at Boeing's market share. Boeing had a big increase in net orders from 774 planes in 2022 to 1,314 planes in 2023. But Airbus had over 2,000 orders last year. It has delivered more planes and received more orders for the 5th consecutive year in a row. In the late 1990s, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas. It was an aircraft manufacturer which made commercial planes like the MD-11 and MD-80, as well as space and military aircraft.
There is a belief that the focus at Boeing has shifted since this merger with McDonnell Douglas to profitability as opposed to engineering excellence.
I think one of the big indicators of that was moving the corporate headquarters away from any of the big manufacturing sites.
After the 1997 merger, Boeing moved its corporate headquarters after 85 years in Seattle to Chicago, and more recently to Arlington, Virginia. 27 years later, experts and CEOs are still blaming that merger for the more recent issues.
My own assessment is, this goes all the way back to the McDonnell-Douglas merger, and it started a change in culture.
If I were making recommendations to the company, I would say, yeah, sure. Management should be located in the Puget Sound region, their biggest manufacturing site. And in fact, they should be sleeping on the factory floor at this point to get everything kind of back in order.
Many of Boeing's other programs have also faced problems, and they've faced cost overruns, and they've faced quality control problems.
Profitability, of course, matters, but you're not going to be a profitable company if your customers don't believe you have the products they need to buy. And airlines have been opting for Airbus